My wife Anna passed close to my son's 7th birthday. She was off visiting her family in Mexico and suddenly fell ill. About 72 hours from her showing the initial symptoms, we were told she'd passed away. I can't properly describe how devastating it was. I'm not going to go into that, not here. I've lived in Guatemala my whole life. While I've been both north and south of the border a couple of times, there had always been something pulling me back to my home country. Anna and I had lived in Antigua ever since Gaspar was born, but we'd always talked about moving to the East Coast. She was born there, and it always seemed like a nice place to raise kids. Now, we only had time to have one child, but I was going to give him the best life I could afford. I mean, it's not like we didn't try to have more. Things just didn't work out that way. I could still see her whenever I saw my boy. He had her eyes and her brown hair. I couldn't look at him without remembering the promises we'd made. So a couple of months after Anna passed, I packed our things and moved. No more waiting. If you continue northeast past Puerto Barrios, there is a small coastal town. You know you're getting there when the roads turn to dirt and the jacaranda trees grow taller. It's like nature knows people gotta stay longer in the sun, so the branches reach a little further and the shade grows a little thicker. I'd grown up working with boats, so it was easy enough to get a job. A couple of folks knew Anna's family, so I had a foot in the door before they even met me. I got a cheap house made of beautiful smooth white stone, and one wall which was just raw exposed brick. It really reflected the town. Stunningly beautiful from the right angle. We moved in on short notice. The house had been empty since the previous owner passed, and the surviving family decided to sell it off. It was nice enough, but you could tell there was more history to it than you might be comfortable with. Little notches on the floor, subtle stains on the walls, a kitchen where the smell of fried fish wouldn't go away. It wasn't unpleasant, just different. Anna's death had been hard on everyone. I had to keep up appearances and focus on Gaspar. But now that I was settling into a new routine, things were changing fast. Gaspar was starting school and getting to meet all new friends. I guess, in a way, I was supposed to do that too. It's silly worrying about whether your work colleagues are going to like you or not, but it can make or break your social life. And at my age, what little social life you have is precious. As I got used to the new town, I spent a lot of time by the sea. Boats would come and go at all hours of the day. There was this one station by the pier open 24 hours a day where everyone was registered, meaning there was always some disinterested teenager sitting in the booth, waiting to sign a sheet of paper. I think the smell was the hardest to get used to. Salt and fish and foam. Sick, sweet and salt. All hitting you at different angles like the southpaw of a skillful boxer. On my first day of work, I was early. Early enough to watch the first fisherman pull into the pier. A tired man in his early 50s pulled a cart with 4 coolers, waving at the tired kid in the booth. He sat down on the bench next to me. Maybe he was overworked or a little drunk, but I could tell he wasn't all right. He looked over at me with deep bags under his eyes. "You're new," he stated matter-of-factly. "I am," I said. "I fix boats." "Good," he nodded. "Only reason mine floats is because it's too shit for the ocean to eat." "She's not a picky eater," I smiled. "What?" I said she's not a picky eater, I repeated. "You know, the ocean." "Don't talk like you know her, Quate," he said, giving me a cold look. "You don't know her like I do. Don't pretend you do." "I'm just making conversation, and I'm here to make it a good one," he said, pointing a finger at me. "Don't think you can figure this place out in a couple days. There's history in this land. There's bones in that sea. You understand?" "I get you," I said. "I respect that." The man got up and dragged his cart along, smacking the side of the wall of a nearby house. Someone was already up to meet him, but they didn't seem too happy about it. I watched 2 young women help carry the coolers inside, talking to him with tired smiles, and he just waved them off. "Don't mind Simon," someone said. "He's crazy." I turned around and recognized my employer, Lino. He'd stood there for a while just to see what I was up to. I got up in a flash, reaching out to shake his hand. He accepted it with a smile. "He's 30 years older than he looks," Lino continued. "Been a grumpy old man since he was a kid, they say." "I don't mind grumpy," I smiled. "That's what towns are made of, right?" "Yeah," Lino grinned. "So let's hope we get to be grumpy old men, too." Lino's workshop felt like someone's living room. Pictures on the walls, music playing on the speakers, equal smells of motor oil and Ron Zacapa. Lino was an absolute treasure of a person. If "don't worry, be happy" had a face, it'd be him. He had a green shirt that was older than my kid, and this sort of ill-kept handlebar mustache that he kept stroking when he tried to keep a serious face. I couldn't help but think he looked like a tanner Freddie Mercury minus the teeth. We worked on the engine of a private boat that day. Leisure-type stuff, not anything big and functional. Someone came in saying the engine kept stalling. Lino figured they'd been getting too close to shore and kept getting trash stuck in the propeller, but I convinced him to do a thorough check. We found some engine tearing that might lead to a complete breakdown in a couple more runs, so we fixed it. It was quick and cheap, and Lino charged next to nothing for it despite it costing us half a day to work through. "You make people who can afford a boat like this happy, they won't ever go to someone else," he said. "It's not just making friends, it's good business." By the end of our first day, we stopped outside the workshop to have a smoke. I hadn't smoked since I met Anna, but I didn't see the point to stick to that anymore. One puff, and I got the coughs. Lino picked up on it but decided not to ask. Instead, he pointed at a shed just off the pier. "You see that?" he said. "Take a look. Tell me what you see." "A shed," I said. "Cheap roofing." "No. See what's on the roof?" I looked a little closer. 2 seagulls. "That's right," Lino said. 2 seagulls. "Now have you noticed something strange about them?" "Other than not shitting on me, no." "Yeah, but that's just the thing. There are gulls everywhere. Listen." I took another puff of smoke, letting it coat my lungs and simmer into my nerves. I turned my head up and closed my eyes. All I could hear was the pulse of the ocean and the clatter of everyday life coming from the buildings around us. I couldn't hear the gulls. "They're silent around here," Lino said. "You won't hear them screaming or attacking. They don't do that." "Bullshit." "No, I'm serious," he smiled. "They say so many people died at sea that even the gulls stopped laughing about it." "They say that, huh?" "Well, Simon does," Lino nodded. "But he loves those things, so he should know. You can see him feeding them before he goes out every night." I didn't even question it. Grumpy people tend to prefer the company of animals. There was a place right next door to the workshop where I could get some cheap tapado, so I bought some for me and Gaspar. I took the long road back home, getting acquainted with the streets and those who lived there. A couple of folks gave me crooked looks and folded arms, but others waved and cheered as I passed. It would take some time, but I could see them warming up to me. By the time I got to my street, I noticed something. There were seagulls all over the roof, looking down on me. About 30 of them, all in all. It was true what Lino said. They'd been unusually quiet. I'd never seen a seagull that hadn't screeched and whooped. But these were different somehow. As I approached, I could see them gathering at the edge of the roof, looking down on me. Gaspar was already home, waiting by the door. Before I got a chance to greet him, one of the gulls opened its mouth and screamed. One by one, they joined in. It wasn't the usual cackling of seagulls. It was more of a laugh. A stunted, stuttered laugh. Gaspar and I had dinner in the living room, watching cartoons on the TV. I asked him about school, but he was too shy to talk about it. He wasn't really a fan of the soup I'd bought, but I promised he'd get used to it. There were so many other things to try too. "If we ask nicely, I bet we can go out on a boat," I said. "I think you'd like it. It's nice out there." "I don't like the ocean," he said. "It's too big, scary. That's what makes it great. You can swim for hours, and there's always something new to see. I prefer YouTube. Smartass. He finished up and hunkered down in his room. I sat down in the kitchen, popped open a gallo, and took the load off my feet. But even then, I noticed a gull on the fence outside, staring right into my kitchen window. And the moment our eyes met, it laughed, and not in a way that gulls usually do. The following morning, after I sent Gaspar to school, I met Simon by the pier again. He had 5 coolers that morning, a successful trip it seemed. He sat down on the same bench, sighed, and gave me a tired side-eye. He didn't have much to say, so I decided to take the lead on this one. "They say you know the gulls," I said. "Is that true?" "You better believe it," he nodded. "They're my children." "So what does it mean when they laugh at you?" He turned to me, his expression growing concerned. "They laugh at you?" "Yeah, a bunch of them did yesterday." "Means you got misery coming, Quaid. They got you with the risas del mar. They sense something." The laugh of the sea. Simon even had a name for it. "They sense that darkness in you, Quaid. You can hide it from the rest, but you're not fooling my gulls. They're gonna laugh at you." "Why'd they do that?" "Maybe they want you to chin up. Maybe you're bringing my gulls down. Maybe they don't think you belong. Could be a lot of things." He got up with a grunt and grabbed his cart. Without looking back, he ended the conversation. "You think you belong here?" He chuckled. "You think this is meant for you?" I had no answer, and in the distance a gull laughed. I spent a couple of days working with Lino to get into the rhythm of things. Just like he'd said, the rich client came back with another boat. This one was more of a touch-up job rather than a pure fix. We just looked it over, cleaned it a bit, and called it a day. Took us just a couple of hours and paid more than the last job 2 times over. We took some time working with the local fishermen. Quick fixes, mostly. Lino introduced me to half the town. I got told more names than I could count. One guy, son of another guy, cousin to a third guy. There was the dumb guy with the hot sister, the even dumber guy who married her. This was a town of stories and lives, and I was jumping straight into it with both feet at once. I stepped out of that workshop feeling lighter than I'd been in weeks. There was that glimpse of something new, that maybe, if I worked hard, I could make a life for myself. Then I peered up at the rooftops, and there the gulls sat laughing. I felt my smile fade. They could see past it all. They could see and laugh at my pain. It was there, hidden under a vain attempt at fitting in. "Don't let them get to you, compa," Lino said. "It's just birds." But it wasn't that easy. I'd hear them every morning as I went to work. I'd see them on the rooftops, looking down on me. They never laughed at anyone else. Not Simon, not Lino, not the dumb guy with the hot sister. No one. Just me. The risas del mar, the laugh of the sea. Maybe Misery didn't love company. Maybe she just lives by the coast. Sometimes the gulls would get louder. Whenever I stubbed a toe or stalled an engine, they'd laugh even harder. I would be so prepared to hear them that I'd get distracted, which would just cause more misfortune. I once tried bribing them, putting out a bowl of cooked, unsalted rice. They wouldn't touch it. They just circled it, picked at it, and laughed. I'd never seen a bird reject a free meal. One night, as I went to bed, I thought about the people that used to live in that house. They'd slept in that room too, coloring it with their little dreams and hopes. I could almost see myself in 30 years, just like they did, laying in that same room, dreaming the same dreams. But in those moments, the space next to me felt colder than ever. I missed Anna with every breath of every day, but in those cold hours of the night, it hurt just a little more. And in those moments of weakness, where a tear might chase its way into my eyes, I'd hear the gulls outside, laughing. "Please stop," I'd whisper into my pillow. "Please stop laughing." That just made them laugh harder, louder. "I've done you nothing, please." But they didn't stop. They'd laugh all night, hoping to wound me for just a little longer. Lino had a slightly different view of things. He and the other locals stuck to this one, saying that would slip out every now and then. He who is often absent stops being missed. You have to put yourself out there if you want to be part of things. So instead of wallowing in self-pity, I was going to have to put myself on the line. Now, Lino never once asked me about Anna and our lives together. He'd heard a little about it, and he knew better than to ask. So instead, he just did his best to bring me along. Fishing trips with some of his cousins, late nights at the bar watching sports and drinking rum. Gaspar would stay at a friend's house. He was quicker to pick up friends than me, I figured. Lino would introduce me to single women my age, but back off when he realized I wasn't ready. But with every step forward, there'd be that long walk home at night, and every single time, there'd be a gull laughing its heart out, reminding me that at the end of it all, that room would be as dark as ever, as cold as ever, dead. There was one morning when I hadn't slept that well. As I ran into Simon, the gulls were at full force, circling me, laughing from up high. I snapped at Simon as he came by, pulling his cart. Just 3 coolers that morning. "What do I gotta do?" I asked. "How long are they gonna laugh at me?" "You getting mad at the birds, Q8? Simon had the same laugh as the gulls. Maybe they got it from him. "I'm serious," I said. "This is ridiculous." "You blame the mirror for making you ugly too?" "Shut up." He stopped for a moment and looked at me, shaking his head. "You know the last one the gulls laughed at?" he asked. "Same woman that lived in that house of yours, not long before she died." "You trying to scare me?" "Ask anyone," he continued. "Right before she died, they were all over her. And her husband? Who knows? He never left the house. You'd forget he even lived there." "So what are you trying to say? That I'm about to die?" Simon rolled his eyes and grabbed his cart. "I'm telling you to stop being weak," he snapped back. "Have a drink, cut your hair, kiss a woman." He flicked a couple of coins at me as he wandered off, still laughing, just like the gulls. That day turned out awful. Just awful. I broke an expensive spare part and cut my palm on a sharp knife. When Lino came over to help, I turned him away. I didn't even think about it. Even though my ears couldn't hear them, my heart echoed with the shrieking laughter of the gulls, the risas del mar. When I sat down to clear my head, Lino joined me, giving me some time to calm down. "You know the people who lived in that house before me?" I asked. "Lady de Leon?" he asked. "Yeah, I remember her." "Simon says the gulls laughed at her before she died." "Yeah, I remember," he said. "Can't say it was a big surprise. She was ancient, but we miss her." "What about her husband?" Lino raised an eyebrow at that. Then he nodded, as if a light had come on in the back of his mind. "Right," he said. "I forget about him sometimes. He never left the house, but you could see his stupid red hat in the windows." "Did he die too?" "I suppose he did." Lino nodded. "I can't remember." Coming home that evening, I anticipated the gulls sitting in a row along the roof, laughing at me. They knew I'd had a bad day, and they weren't about to let me forget it. But they weren't there. The house was empty. Not a single gull. Not a hint of a laugh. It was nice, in a way. It showed me a home the way it was meant to be seen. I wouldn't dread going to sleep that night, but I still felt like something was off. For all the unease those birds brought me, there was something stranger about them suddenly going away. Had I done something wrong? "Gaspar," I called out. "I'm making shrimp. You want coconut rice or the usual?" There was no response. I walked out into the hallway looking around. He wasn't in the living room. Not in the backyard either. By the time I dug through his room, I could feel my pulse rising. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't coming out. I called out and there was no response. "Gaspar!" I kept calling, but he wasn't out back or out front. He wasn't coming down the road. I expected his voice, but got only echoes of mine. He should have been home by now, and the seagulls were gone. I called his school, but he wasn't there. I asked for the name of his friend so I could see if he stayed with them for dinner, but I got an unusual response. What friend? Turns out, Gaspar had been having trouble in school. He had trouble relating to the other kids, and they had trouble fitting him into groups. He wouldn't get into fights, but he would blend into the background. They'd forget he was even there. I called every kid in his class, asking if they'd seen my boy. Most of them didn't know his name. No one had seen anything. He'd just put on his backpack and wandered off, like every other day. Or so they thought. They couldn't remember for sure. Finally, I turned to Lino. I asked him to reach out to everyone he knew. My boy is missing, I stuttered. You must help me. I must find him. You have a kid? He asked. Of course. He's Gaspar, my boy. You never talk about him, Lino said. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I have a son, I emphasized. I'll make some calls. What does he look like? I looked at one of the pictures on the wall. Gaspar, Anna, and me. It was blurry, sun-bleached. Brown hair, I said. He has brown hair. What else? I didn't have an answer. For some reason, I couldn't think of anything. Not his eyes, not his smile. I could barely even imagine his voice. I hung up on Lino and looked out the window. A single gull sat on the fence outside, its head cocked to the side. They weren't laughing anymore. If anything, it seemed concerned. I drove around town asking anyone and everyone if they'd seen him. A boy walking around with a backpack, looking lost or scared. No one had seen him, heard him, nothing. Finally, I drove by this run-down little one-story house, its walls patched with driftwood planks and sheet metal. It was impossible not to recognize the man swaying back and forth in a hammock on the porch. Simon, listening to his radio. I stopped. I wanted to ask him if he'd seen my boy, but I knew the answer already. Instead, I got out of my car and called out to him. Did you ask them to do this? I yelled. Is this you? Is this what? He yelled back. What do you want? You don't like me, so now the gulls don't like me, and now my boy is gone. Simon rolled out of his hammock and turned off the radio. He gave me a curious look, not angry, concerned, like the gulls. He didn't come home. I can't find him. I continued. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, Simon. They laugh at pain, Quate, he said. Pain is for those who are still here. Those who are gone don't suffer anymore. Stop it with the fucking riddles, I snapped. I'll make you swallow your teeth. Just tell me what they did to my boy. Simon picked something up from the side of his hammock and walked over to me. Still not angry. He looked up at the sky. I don't think they were laughing, Quate, he said. I think they were trying to warn you. That's not what you said. You said they laugh at my pain. Two things can be true, you know. They're birds. They're not complicated. But you know what I think? He took a swig from a bottle and pointed eastward. A long line of gulls could be seen in the distance, circling something. Maybe they're still warning you, he said. Pay attention. Listen. I got back in my car, trying to see the gulls. It was a weird angle, but I could hang my head out the window if necessary. Simon knocked on my window. No, he said. They're going out to sea. He opened the car door and held out a hand. We'll take my boat. Simon's boat was in desperate need of a touch-up. He'd been stubborn about getting it fixed, but I could hear the engine struggling the moment it puttered away from the pier. We were heading east, where the gulls still circled. I had a moment of doubt. I'd been projecting my insecurities on these birds for weeks at that point. What if I was still doing it? But no, that wasn't it. Despite it all, I could tell Simon had his heart in the right place. When shit hits the fan, you don't want the person who tells you everything is going to be okay. You want the one who spits on the problem and say, let's get this done. The sun was setting, slowly but surely. A stiff breeze rattled the buttons on my pale orange shirt. I couldn't smell the ocean anymore. I'd gotten used to it. Something hit the boat, maybe a rock, or a sudden push from a wave. Simon tried to keep us straight, but it was too late. I fell overboard, plunging into the dark. For those who haven't swum in the open sea, there's nothing quite like it. An eternal mix of emerald blue in every direction, turning into a shimmering orange as the sun sets. In the distance, you might see a few spots swimming about, only to realize they're fish the size of your hand. But down there, it all looks small, even you. And don't look down. At the best of times, you see immense darkness, sucking you down. And in the worst of cases, you see something coming up. I forced my head above the surface. The sun had already set. A mild fog was settling over the ocean surface. I couldn't see anything. Left, right, it was all just water. Waves pushing me in every direction, grabbing a hold of me. I could feel a chill reaching up to spill the warmth in my chest. My toes were already tingling. As I kicked, one of my shoes came off, tumbling downward like a slow leaf in the wind, rocked by invisible currents. I called out to Simon, but I could barely hear my voice over the waves. There was no way he'd hear me over the engine. Then again, I couldn't even hear him anymore. He must have kept going or sunk, but I could hear something else. Seagulls. I listened and swam until my arms ached. My eyes burned from the salt. I could feel my legs taking longer and longer to kick, as my head dipped further under the surface. I had trouble getting my mouth up. I swallowed a mouthful of salt water as my rhythm broke, and in another 2 kicks I was submerged. I counted to 30, kicking as hard as I could. Then out of nowhere, my toes touched sand. I pulled my way onto a long deserted beach. Not a bird among the trees, no insects in the bushes. A steady wind pulled on the leaves of the blue sunflowers resting under the sweet gum trees, making them rattle like a dry applause. Then I saw people, just a couple of them, standing further in, by the tree line. Dark, tired eyes, lips so chapped they looked like leather. A man with a broken shirt hanging off his left shoulder. A middle-aged woman in a folk dress. As I approached, they stepped back. "I need help," I wheezed. "I need to find my boy." They didn't say a word. I took a couple steps forward and they faded into the dark, disappearing into the shade of the trees. They left no footsteps in the sand. There were so many more. The further I went, and the closer I looked, I saw them. Quiet people, looking on from afar. If I got too close, they'd step away. If I stopped to look, they did the same. Dark, tired eyes, asking me silent questions. Some of them looked old, not in age but in clothes. 100 years, 200 years, maybe 1,000. One of them was an old man with an unusual red bucket hat. I looked a little closer but couldn't figure out what he reminded me of. Perhaps I forgot. I'd been so preoccupied with my own troubles and woes that I hadn't considered Gaspar. I hadn't stopped to make sure he was okay. Much like the rest of town, and even his school, I'd forgotten about him. Maybe that's what the gulls were laughing at. Not me messing up another social faux pas with Lino and the boys, but me forgetting to check in on my boy. "I'm sorry, Anna," I muttered, as I dragged my feet through the cooling sand, one shoe missing. I was just looking at me. It was just about me. I forgot. There was a fire up ahead, a campfire on the beach. Stepping closer, I could see 2 people sitting on a log, staring into the flames. A tall man and a boy. I recognized neither. I was having trouble focusing on the man. One moment, he was tall and slim. The other, he was short and fat. He was young. He was old. He was handsome. He was ugly. He would shift and turn, as if to change whenever I thought I had an idea of what he looked like he refused to be what I expected. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The words didn't come from him. Instead, they came from the tree line. A dozen dialects all at once. A single chorus of voices. "I cannot care for you," they said. "I'm looking for someone," I said. "I don't need you to care." "Who are you looking for?" A cacophony. Struggling voices having been dormant for years. I'd hear them fight to remember the words and to roll their stiff tongues. "My boy," I said. "I'm looking for my boy." "Is this him?" they asked. I looked at the boy by the fire. I couldn't say. I couldn't place him in my mind. I could only remember what I'd said about him, or what others had said. I could remember Anna telling me how she loved his curly brown hair, but I couldn't picture it. "I care for him," they said. "I do not forget." Their voices crackled, breaking into monotones. "They left me in the woods," a man said. "I slept in the mountains. No one came to find me," said another. "I fell over. They kept going. There were hammerheads in the water. They never asked me my name." People abandoned, forgotten, sacrificed, left to die by the side of the road or stuck in a mountain crevice. "If he is here, you must find him," the choir said. "Will you look?" "I will look," I agreed. "I'll look anywhere." "You may have to stay for long," they said. "Until perhaps you are forgotten too." "I don't care." Good. In the blink of an eye, I was along a country road. My leg was broken. I was screaming for help, but no one came. The flies wouldn't stop gathering on my face, picking at dry blood. Pain, desperation. They should have been there hours ago, but they forgot. Bleeding through the night, passing from warmth to cold to warmth again, serenaded to the other side by whispering insects. Then, watching a boat disappear on the horizon, my legs growing weak, the waves growing higher. They must have noticed I was gone. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't care. Movement in the dark, creeping closer. Something brushing up against my leg. Something with rough skin. A single eye reflecting the moonlight, as a hammerhead shark waits for me to die. Life after life after life, all forgotten. And at the end of every final breath, the gulls laughed in the distance, trying to make the others see, to listen, to remember. It was ceaseless, relentless. In one moment, I'm drinking myself to death, hoping someone would find me in a bathtub. In the next, I'm outside a bar, with a knife in my gut. I'm in the corner of a burning building, but the firemen forgot to look for me. Death after death after death. But I have to keep going. Then a boy. He didn't want his dad to worry, so he said he would stay with a friend. Instead, he hid in his room, looking at pictures of his mother. He made his own bed, cooked his own dinner. It would be okay. He rarely left the house. He skipped school most days. There was no point for him to learn since he couldn't picture a future anyway. He'd get by somehow. Or maybe he wouldn't. Maybe it didn't matter. Another voice joining the choir of things that didn't need to be. It was a cruel twist of fate. I couldn't remember him. No matter how hard I tried, and even if I knew in my heart of hearts he was among them, I couldn't picture him. But I could remember Anna, and thinking of her eyes and her hair, I could remember him too. I remembered her words, whispering his name as she cradled him, and with those sprinkles of thought, a picture started to form, a name, a shape, a voice. "He's afraid of the sea," I said. "He'd rather watch YouTube." "Is that okay?" asked the boy by the fire. "Yeah," I sobbed. "That's okay, we can watch together." I took him by the hand. The people in the dark stepped aside. The man by the fire remained silent, watching as we went. And in the distance, the gulls laughed. Not out of menace or spite, but out of relief. It hasn't been an easy life since then. Both Gaspar and I had healing to do. We had to start talking openly about Anna, and the life we could expect without her. It was painful, but necessary. We talked about where we'd celebrate the holidays, where we'd go on holiday, and instead of presuming or hoping, we talked about it. And we made plans. Maybe he'd have a new mother someday. Maybe he'd even have a little brother or sister to play with. He said he'd like that. Whenever I was ready to try, I would have his blessing. I took him out with Simon's boat once. I helped fix it up a bit first. The man is saltier than the sea, but he's honest. I'm surprised how much Gaspar likes him. I think Simon had a soft spot for Gaspar too. Maybe kids are like gulls in a way. Simple. The gulls don't laugh no more. Not for me, not for anyone. Now when Simon goes to feed them, I sit next to him. Gaspar does too, and they humbly accept whatever we offer.